All right, welcome to this episode of Forge Father FM. We are going to be deep diving into the Spartan Ultra race that was just done in KILLington, Vermont. I've been getting a lot of questions and emails sent in from folks that want to know a little bit more about the experience. And so I would love to do an overview, and that's what we're going to do in this episode. So, just to give you a little bit of insight into this. So, this was this past weekend. It is now Friday, and my body has finally recovered from the 14-hour, 13-minute experience that I had going through the ultra race. I finished with just about 16 minutes and some change to spare before they closed down the track officially. So very, very fulfilling moment to finish that race, knowing that when it was all said and done, in the scoring table, they told us 37% passed. So being a part of that 37%, I'm pretty proud of that because this was by far the hardest test, both physically and mentally, I've taken on ever in my life. And I did the Montana Spartan race last year, which up to this point was the hardest physical mental challenge that I had taken on. And this put that to shame. So I'm excited to kind of dig into the specifics. I got the map pulled up and everything. And so I'm going to kind of walk us through the whole race and talk about the different bits and pieces of it. And it'll be kind of fun to kind of reminisce about, certain points of the race. So let's go ahead and dig in. I'm going to share my screen here. There we go. So the layout of this course. So this is at KILLington ski resort. So if you've ever driven by a ski resort, like in the summertime, you can, as obviously as you're getting close to it, you can look up, you can see the different peaks, you can see the different trails. And honestly, when you look at them, you can't really get a good feel for how steep some of the areas are. I mean, you can just look up and you can kind of see the top, and it is what it is. But once you get on the mountain and you start doing these climbs, it's a whole different ball game. So either way, first lap. So with the ultra, you do a whole lap around the course, and then over here in the purple, you got what they call the ultra loop. So that's when you branch off and you go into the ultra portion of the race. Then you finish that first lap, and then you go through the whole lap again, not having go. You don't go through that ultra loop the second time around. So starting off, pretty basic beginning to the race. It's just a kind of a straight run. The first obstacle, we got over walls, which is super easy, super simple. I mean, your body's feeling fresh. You got some bounce to your step still, so not a challenge there. And then we get into a little bit of a wooded area here. The second obstacle was a cord crawl, and so they have the cord set pretty low. So you're crawling, and again, at this point in the race, I mean, your body's super fresh, so you're actually like legitimately army crawling underneath these cords. And interesting situation happened with the guy right next to me. So the guy in front of me, he had a water pack on, and as he's crawling under these cords, because these are like bungee cords, and I kind of saw this coming. The cord got caught on his pack, and he's crawling, and so it's stretching this bungee cord out, and then it finally got unhooked and just boom, snapped and hit the guy right in the face, who was right next to me. So had he not been in front of me a little bit, that would have snapped back and got me actually. So guy ended up being okay, but just kind of a dangerous situation there. But either way, we come out of the woods there, and from there we get a feel for what the downhills are going to be like. So this section here is a ski slope, and you can't really get a good look at how steep that is, but it's pretty steep. So you do a quick little run down, and you're back in front of the festival area here. And then the third obstacle is the helix. So it's like this X-shaped apparatus. It has a bunch of handles on it, like vertical handles, horizontal handles. It's a little tricky. I mean, it's an easy obstacle to pass, but you got to have a little bit of mobility and flexibility, because there's parts where you have to like stretch your leg out across, grab a bar. I mean, you're like pretty much full spread eagle on the apparatus. So after you finish that, now you start getting a little bit of a feel for the climb. So there's a little bit of a climb here, and then we run into the first barbed wire section. So, and this is a crawl uphill. So you're still going uphill. And, you know, Spartan being who they are, they had, and I noticed this all over the course, they had water running, you know, onto the course. So it would make it muddy. And so you're crawling through mud underneath barbed wire here, which at this point, the first lap through, it's kind of fresh still. And what was nice about being in the ultra age group division, the course is somewhat fresh. So it's not super beat down and you haven't had hundreds of people run through it yet. So a lot of the different sections aren't extremely muddy, which made the barbed wire crawl the first time through a little bit difficult because it's pretty low. The barbed wire is pretty low. The ground hasn't been knocked down yet. So, but after that, still nasty climb. We're getting a good feel for how the climbs are going to be here. And so I remember after that barbed wire climb, it was a pretty long climb up here, right? So you get up to this first peak, and I remember turning around for a brief moment, and you get a good look of the festival area, and you're not even at the highest peak yet, and it's pretty awesome sight. You're still pretty fresh at this point, right? So from there, I remember going through some downhills, some kind of technical downhill sections, like so pretty wooded areas. You got to really pay attention to where you're stepping because you're going over rocks, over stumps, and you're going downhill. So if you make a wrong step, it could mean race over, right? I mean, a lot of problems for you. But either way, there's a couple of switchbacks here, very difficult climbs here. And I remember hitting mile 2, and it's just like you see these little mile markers, and you're like, damn, that was a long mile, right? So some more technical downhills here in heavily wooded areas. We kind of zigzag back up, and then we really start getting some nasty downhills here. I remember this pretty technical area here going through the woods. And then you see this long section here. This is what they call the death march. And that's exactly what it is. It is a death march. So it is straight up this ski path here. So you are just marching. I remember, I mean, you're just right next to the ski lifts, right? So these huge posts, when you're next to these huge posts, it's like they're huge. And then at certain sections, you're like looking ahead and you can see so far ahead of you, like the posts are tiny. And so it really kind of just gives you that, oh shit, like we're not even close to being at the top yet feeling for this. And I remember before we even got to mile 4, I want to say we were probably right in the middle, and there is like a false peak in the middle. So you're climbing, it's pretty steep, and it looks like, oh shit, it's going to taper off here and it's going to level out. And it did for a very short period of time. I want to say right around where you can kind of see this trail intersecting with that. But then the very end of this got to be pretty steep. So, but either way, I started cramping already before we get to mile 4. So my adductors started to cramp a little bit just the way I was kind of walking up the hill. Was really trying to load up my glutes, so not coming up on my toes, because that's another thing. I did not want my calves to start cramping on me. So I'm really trying to get my glutes involved a little bit more, work the hamstrings a little bit more on the way up. But I'll never forget hitting that first mile marker for mile marker 4. I can't remember for sure what my watch said, but I want to say it was about 90 minutes in at that point. So it's like, oh shit, we're only 4 miles in, 90 minutes. That's a while. But either way, you get up to the top, beautiful view up here. I remember finally getting up there. I was like, all right, cool. But then it's all downhill. So this is one of the longer downhills that we did. So you're going down ski slopes. At this point, my legs are still super fresh. I'm running pretty good. I'm starting to pick it up. I kind of picked up kind of a new technique that I was using. I was just kind of sidestepping, side hopping down the inclines, and I was making up a lot of ground here on the uphills. The uphills were my jam. I didn't stop at all throughout the whole race. I was just nice, steady, slow pace up the mountain. Didn't want to step over to the side and rest. I just wanted to kind of get up these uphills as best I could. But either way, coming on the downhills, we hit mile 5. I'm feeling pretty good at this point. My legs kind of just freshened up for whatever reason. Wasn't cramping anymore. I remember that. And then we hit a 6-foot wall, which easy. Now we're going through some more technical downhills here, going through some heavily wooded areas. I remember, I want to say we popped out on like a fire road path. So you're kind of running down a gravel road. Olympus, which is kind of a triangle looking apparatus. You can go on either side. It has a hole, has a chain, and then it has like a climbing grip on it. Super simple. I just go left hand on the climbing grip. I go right hand on the holes, and I just shimmy across. I put my feet up on the wall, and I just shimmy across the thing. Pretty easy obstacle for myself, but that's where a lot of people fail on that one. It's a tough one. Next one, a little bit higher wall. So we're at 8-foot wall at this point. Legs are still pretty fresh, but now we're getting into another uphill climb here on this next ascension. And let's see where we at. This is the tyrosine transverse. So I prepared for this one. This one's an easy obstacle, only it's painful because the way I do it, it's basically a rope and you go backwards on it. You kind of pull yourself underneath the rope. And so my legs are wrapped around the rope, and I always get a nasty rope burn on my ankle when I do it. So I prepared myself this time. I had a wristband around my ankle. And so when I jumped up on that thing, the wristband padded my ankle and made it super easy at that point. Next obstacle was the 7-foot wall. Again, super simple, just jumping up and over that thing. And then we're making the heavy climb here on the back end. These were some pretty nasty, steep climbs. Hitting the barbed wire crawl, the second one. So this was a nasty barbed wire crawl. I mean, it's on a pretty steep incline. After that, what do we hit? Pipe layer, which was kind of a nice change up. So it's like you hit this, you hit a pretty steep incline, and then right where that turned, I remember that pipe layer. It's just a simple one. You kind of just climb yourself through it. But after that, nasty climb to the peak here. So we go up to the top. 13, I want to say this was the bender. Yep, or the beater. So it's a sideways. No, you grab the bar and it kind of rotates. And that's kind of the trick to it. I mean, if you swing across it like just normal monkey bars, it's a pretty easy and simple obstacle to pass. I see people where they try to stop and then the thing rotates down and now you're kind of dead in the water. So if you can think about trying to use your momentum when you come across, that's the trick to really dominating those obstacles in particular. But either way, awesome, amazing view once you get up to the top. This is basically the peak. And then there's a couple of pretty nasty downhills here. And the next two, so there's a bender, which is like a backwards. So I want to say there's 5 or 6 bars that you grab and you're kind of going in reverse. For me, I get up at the top and I just do a bar muscle up over the top. That's one of my favorite obstacles, actually, is just that one right there. And then 15 was the twister. So the twister, it is a horizontal pipe. So there's handles on it and then it rotates down. And so as you go across, again, it's just you use your momentum, you grab the posts, it's going to rotate down and you're just kind of patient with it. It's a pretty simple obstacle, but if you struggle with hanging stuff, it could be a pretty challenging one, right? But either way, after that, I remember, again, coming down from the peak now. So we're going down some pretty steep inclines here. So going through that, and then we end up at Stairway to Sparta, which is a fun obstacle. Basically, it's kind of at an angle. You got to jump up. There's some climbing grips at the top, and you get those, and then you basically reach up above a certain point. There's posts running across, and you just kind of pull yourself up at that point. So another easy obstacle. And so now it's all a lot of downhill running from here. We're kind of going through the backside of the course, heavily wooded areas. We're going through some technical downhills here, kind of in and out of trees and, over rocks and all sorts of stuff. So that lasts for a good while. Like this whole backside here is just through heavily wooded area. And I mean, it's just like there are so many points where I was by myself. I was like, holy shit, am I still on the track? Or like, where's everybody at? Just kind of on your lonesome in the woods through there. And then this is where we split off to go into the ultra loop. And I'll just say this, the ultra loop was absolutely horrible. It was terrible. It was just basically steep, hard inclines, multitude of them. And so when the beast splits, it goes straight, and then you had to turn right for the ultra, and it's just straight up a nasty climb. And so you're just going straight up. You're doing a couple, like this first one was nasty. I remember you get up to the top, it's a terrible downhill run, and then it's right back up again, and then a terrible downhill run. And I remember this section here in particular, it felt like it took forever, this downhill running, right? I remember seeing a guy, this is when a couple of the elites, actually, no, it's not this section. I'm getting caught up with another part down here, I believe. But I do remember a guy trying to overdo it a little bit on the downhills, completely wiping out. He's going a little bit too fast. But either way, this climb right here, the thought that I had going through my mind when we got about halfway up on this was, this is Spartan giving the ultra runners the big FU. Like, here's the test, here's the challenge, because this is when I first had a thought in my mind that I might not finish this race. Going up this incline right here, these were like black diamonds right here going up, and they lasted forever. If you can see, here's the death march. I mean, it's pretty much 3/4 of the death march. So I remember, I want to say it might have been this point where it's like you get up here, you don't know what's coming next. And I remember it's so steep that all you had to do is just lean forward a little bit and you were bear crawling. So it was like really mossy, and it was just nasty, rough terrain. So either you get all the way up, and then you're just like this long downhill, and that right there took a lot out of the legs because you just climbed uphill and now you're coming downhill. And so let's look at some of the obstacles that we missed. So 17, the Irish tables. The first time doing a legit Irish table, I thought it was super easy. You jump up and you kind of use a kipping motion to get over the top. Super simple. I think if they would have had that in the race again later, it would have been quite the challenge with fatigued legs and fatigued arms. But this right here, 18, this was a sandbag carry. So what was so brutal about this was you get up all the way on this climb, and then you break off and you do this sandbag carry loop, right? That's not even a part of the actual trail. You're doing the loop as its own thing. So for this particular setup, you had a sandbag, you're going uphill, and then you cut across a little bit, and now you're coming downhill with this sandbag. And I remember you're kind of going down into ditches that were filled with mud and water. And I remember at one point I like slipped on my ass and fell down and had this sandbag, and I didn't want to dump the sandbag. And so thankfully, training functionally and having that strength, I was able to stand back up and just carry on and keep moving forward. But that was a pretty damn difficult obstacle right there, which that's just the ultra loop sandbag carry. There's a sandbag carry and a bucket carry on the beast course that we get to do, right? So, but either way, that's nasty downhill. And I remember this right here coming down here and seeing all the other racers, coming past here, seeing like the beast racers. And I was like, damn, because the course meets back up. And what was kind of a sigh of relief with that was, a lot of times when the ultra loop splits off the course, there's a big amount that you miss on the beast course. And so when you come back around, like you're having to go through a part of the course that you didn't really do the first time around. But in this case, it was just a straightaway that we missed. So it was really nothing. But either way, 19 was plate drag, super simple, easy obstacle, nothing too bad there. And then we got into the armor. So it's basically a big, huge ball attached to a handle. You walk it about 50 feet, you walk it back, nothing serious, but legs are screaming at you a little bit at that point, right? So after that, it's a lot of downhills going in and out of wooded areas here. I remember this part from armor to, I believe this is dunk tank, maybe. Nope, the Z wall. Felt like it took forever to get there. So either way, you're running through, and right here, this area, this turn up to here, brutal climbs. These were some pretty steep hill climbs right here. And I remember getting out here, and you're able to kind of see, pretty awesome view of the mountain here. But the steep climbs here were absolutely brutal. But either way, you're coming around here. 21, what was 21? Yep, the Z wall. So you're actually, Z wall is super easy, super easy. And what was nice here was you got a good string of obstacles. Bang, bang, bang. Let's see, we got monkey bars, super easy. The rope climb, super easy. And then the spear throwing. This The first lap around, I fucking nail the spear throw. I'm on a high. I'm feeling really good. And so now we're taking a bunch of downhills. And again, what was nice, we hit a series of obstacles real quick again. So we had rolling mud, and then you had the dunk wall. Then you had the slip wall. So it's basically an incline wall, and they started to use this new material. It's like it's a slippery when wet steel material. So you got to get a running start, and there's ropes hanging down. And luckily I have long enough arms where I get a good enough running start. I'm able to grab that rope, and then it's just a real easy pull yourself up at that point. But this is where a lot of people fail because they're wet. They don't get a proper running start. They just try to jump up and grab the rope, and you got to have a lot of momentum. And so this first part through is starting to get a little bit muddy in front of the obstacle. However, the second time through, when I talk about the ultra loop, I had some serious doubt about this obstacle. And right there was like kind of a make and break, but I'll get to that in a bit. But either way, you get through that. And then what is the next? Hercules hoist, real easy. You're just laying down, pulling a rope, pulling a heavy sack up to the top of the hoist there. And funny story on that, the rope that I grabbed, I like lean back, and usually the bag starts to go up a little bit. But I'm like tugging on the rope, trying to give it everything I had, and the thing isn't moving. I'm like, what the fuck? Am I this weak? Can I not like pull this bag up, or what the hell's going on here? And I look up, and it's like all tangled. So I just go to the next one. It's super easy. But from there, I remember now you're going through kind of a flatter area, and you're just in the woods. So it's very technical, kind of trail racing here, having to go over logs, under logs, over rocks, having to be fairly careful. It's not super steep or anything like that. But this is where we get to the bucket carry. So right here, bucket carry, heavy ass bucket, filled with water, filled with gravel, odd objects, obviously. So this is the actual loop right here for it. So you're going uphill, which was very difficult because at this point your legs are screaming at you. You're 12 and a half miles in or so. I made it all the way through the first bucket carry without setting it down. And I remember on the other side coming down on the bucket carry, it was some rough terrain that you were walking on. It wasn't just a flat, surface. It was, you're going through a number of ditches, like how these ski resorts are set up. It's like you go down, level out, go down, level out. And there's just like these dips and ditches, whether it's like a black diamond course or what. But that proposed extra challenge on that. But really locked it into my mindset that I did not want to set that bucket down. I saw people setting the bucket down all over the place. I was like, fuck that. Let's be uncommon here. So, but I was really happy to have been able to do that the first time through. A lot of just running through the woods again. Next, vertical cargo, which that one is a very fun obstacle. So there's like a platform that you got to jump up on. And first couple of races that I did in Spartan, I was always trying to do it wrong. I was trying to like jump on top of it. Whereas if you just get your hands set properly, all you need to do is just a little muscle up, like just boop, pop your chest on top of it, reach forward, pull yourself on. It's a real simple obstacle at that point. And then you just crawl over cargo net and you're good. So a lot more running through the woods here. And then 31, we come into the inverted wall, which is basically kind of like the bender, but it's just a wooden wall. So you got to climb backwards. You just climb yourself over the wall. And then we run into the hurdles. So there's just like two big hurdles that you crawl over. You're going through a lot more wooded area run here. The Atlas carry. So basically picking up a stone, walking it down and back. And this is actually in front of like the parking lot area. So you're like, I'm getting close. And then boom, you hit the sandbag carry. And so this lap right here, you can't tell from how this map is laid out, but you can see the festival area here. This loop, it goes uphill. It's going uphill, it cuts across, and then it comes back down. And so this sandbag carry, the first time through, super excited because you're going to be getting into the transition area here. You're going to be able to take a little bit of a break, which is nice for the ultra race, right? And so again, I just was like seeing people drop this sandbag all over the place. I'm going to be the uncommon dude. I ain't dropping this motherfucker, right? And so I remember on the way down on this sandbag carry, very rough terrain again, having to go up and down like these small little creeks, very slippery, rocks, things like that. So you get through that. Then the next one, where are we at? We are at the A-frame cargo. And so you actually missed that for the, actually you went through that for the ultra and then you broke off and you were in the transition period at that time. So you didn't have to do the multi-rig. Actually, from what I remember, I had to do the multi-rig twice, right? And I think they have that actually mixed up because I remember it was multi-rig first. You kind of sprinted down, you went down this hill around this um, ski lift machine, hit the multi-rig, then you did the A-frame, then we were basically in the transition. So transition cutoff for this race was 2:30. I made it back to the transition. I remember looking at my watch, it was 1:08. So I was well ahead of the cutoff. And in fact, my buddy that was doing the race with me, Adam, I was in front of him. So at that point, I was like, all right, yes, Adam's a hell of a runner. And so I was pretty happy that I had gotten back to the transition period or transition zone before him, right? So I made it a point to be very, very quick. I filled my water pack back up, put a couple of elements in there, put a couple of tailwind packets in there for electrolytes and just quick energy. That's what I was sipping on the whole time. Restocked myself up with the goos and all the chews that I had left. I ate 3 waffles, so honey stinger waffles. I had a mixture of about, it was 40 grams of protein powder with 75 grams of glycofuse, which is just straight up carbohydrates. So I drank that, ate a banana, and then I took off. So I was only in the transition period for, I don't know, 15, 20-ish minutes. Did not want to hang out very long. I didn't want to start cramping. And I find it interesting because there's dudes like sitting in the transition period, like fucking laying there, like having a picnic. It's like, dude, get back out on the course, keep moving your body, eat on the go. And so that was kind of my thing was I was going to eat the goos, eat the chews on the go. So this second lap this was the test. I remember multiple times on the first one, like I mentioned, when I was on the ultra loop, on this nasty set of climbs here, really thinking to myself, like, damn, I don't know if I'm going to get through this. This is pretty strenuous. I got to go through all this stuff again. And that's really kind of the mental battle on the first lap is you're thinking about having to do all this again. Like the first time we went through that death march, that thought is going through your mind. It's like, holy shit, I'm going to have to do this again. And this is going to be after I've put in X amount of miles at that point. My legs, am I going to be able to do this? Right. So either way, I get through the transition period. I run into Adam. He's about 15 minutes behind me. And so my goal at that point was just to kind of challenge myself. I just wanted to stay in front of Adam as long as I could because I knew he's a strong runner. At this point, he's still probably running the downhills pretty hard. For me, my toes were so destroyed, my big toes, they felt like they were broken. And so all the downhills, it wasn't that my legs were shot, it was that my toes were in so much pain that I could not physically run down the downhills like I was. So I was kind of like shimmying to the side. I was even like zigzagging, hiking down on a lot of downhills. And it was just brutal. But either way, getting back on the course, I remember going through, meeting back up, going through a little ultra loop thing through the woods, and it seemed like it took much longer. But either way, hit all these obstacles up. And this is when it really started to get serious. So the first barbed wire crawl, at this point, the track is really beat up, super muddy. And I'm just crawling at like a snail's pace, right? Like I'm not getting very low. If I got any lower and actually tried to do like a Spider-Man type crawl, my body was just cramping up on me. And so took it super slow. And that was the focus. That's what I kept just saying to myself inside of my mind was just one step after another, one step after another. There were plenty of points where I wanted to stop. I almost felt dizzy. And so I just pull out a chew and I just keep taking steps and just have a chew, have a goo or a chew at the same time, sip on a little bit of water. Every single water station, I would do 2 full drinks of water and then I'd do 1 full cup on my head and I would head out. I didn't want to spend a lot of time resting at certain areas, but this whole second lap, getting through this, I remember I just get to the death march, get that thing done was the whole attitude. And I remember this took a very long time. There are a number of people that I ran into on the death march, ultra runners that were just, they're done. They were cashed out. They're just, I'm taking a little bit of time, taking a little bit of time for myself. Right. So, but made it up to that death march. Remembered I had all these downhills to go. None of these obstacles really did anything. They weren't a challenge. And I remember we get to the second barbed wire call, and boom, that's when my buddy Adam had caught up with me. So I'm like sitting there crawling, and I look to my right. There's my man Adam. I was like, "What's up, dude? It's about time you caught me. I was wondering when you're going to catch me." And so he caught me at that point. I remember getting up to the top of the peak, and this is one of the only times that I actually stopped. We were together. We did that. We did the what was it? The beater bar. Better. I actually challenged him because he failed the first time around. I was like, "Oh man, if you don't get this, you got dinner tonight. So make sure you get this obstacle." And he nailed it. I actually took a little bit of time to adjust my socks because my feet were in such pain. I didn't know if the bottoms of my feet were completely blistered out or what, but adjusted my socks, felt a little bit better. But this whole back half here, the downhills, just destroyed my feet. None of these obstacles really made much difference, didn't really bother me much. So I remember coming down this part, and the goal was to get to armor. You had to get to armor by 7:30, right? So I remember being at the peak. I don't know, it was like 4 o'clock, 4:30 maybe, thinking, hey, I got plenty of time, but moving pretty damn slow. So took a little bit while. I remember getting to that checkpoint, the armor checkpoint, about 90 minutes before I had to be there. It was just a little bit after 6, right? And at this point, moving pretty fucking slow. And all I'm thinking about now is I still got the sandbag carry and I still got the bucket carry. It's going to come down to that. So we get through that, going through the technical trails here. I remember I actually bumped into an individual. We just started talking, and it's starting to get dark at this point. And he's like, "Hey, man, you mind if I tag along?" Because his headlamp was out. I was like, "Sure, you can use me as a headlamp here." And he's like, hopefully I won't hold you up too much. If I do, just leave me in the dust, right?" So, but we kind of stuck together here, and I remember, getting into these technical downhills here with, let's see, we had the Z wall here, and then we had the monkey bars, the rope climb, the spear throw. I missed the fucking spear throw on the second time through, so I had to do a penalty lap, which it was a short penalty loop lap. So just getting right back on track here. I remember just some nasty downhills here, feeling really bad. And this whole string here. So we come up to the rolling mud, the dunk wall, and the slip wall. And at this point, the sun's down. It's completely dark. You're needing your headlamp. And I remember getting to that dunk wall, and I'm like, dude, I don't want to go underwater and risk my lamp getting shut off, right? And so we're teamed up with a couple other guys, and so they were kind of our light at first. We go under the dunk wall, and then I was their light for them, so we kind of did a switcheroo there. And I remember the gentleman that I was with, watching him try to run up that slip wall and grab the rope, not even close. And so I had a little bit of a like all right, it's either we get this or we don't get this at this point. And if we don't get this, we're fucked, because doing 30 burpees at this point, taxed out, like I don't know if we're going to make it back to the cutoff, because things are getting pretty close at this point. And in front of that slip wall, coming out of that dunk wall, like at that point, it's basically underwater, like it's just pure mud. And so it's really hard to get a running start. And so either way, I just say, fuck it. And I just run and I jump and I barely get the rope. And it was just like, boom, such a rush of just energy. And from that point forth, like I got that adrenaline, legs felt great. And so I remember getting through that, and we get to, the Hercules hoist, and we get to the bucket carry. And so here's where I want to share a pretty deep story, right? So I got my partner, my sidekick here. And I remember at that point, I get that slip wall. I'm like, nothing's going to fucking stop me. Like it's go time. This is exactly where I want it to be. Now I get to expose the real me. Like I put in so much work, so much time to complete this race. Here is my opportunity, right? So I remember running up to the bucket carry, and I turned to this guy. His name is Andrew. And I go, Andrew, I ain't setting that fucking bucket down, dude. I'm going. And he's like, okay, well, I don't want to hold you up because I dropped that thing plenty of times the first time around, and there's probably no way I'm carrying that unbroken. I was like, okay. He's like, I'll ask the judge, I'll ask the volunteer what I can do. And he's like, just go ahead, just go ahead. I was like, all right, cool. So I just pick up a bucket, I start going up the hill, and I remember that bucket felt like 1,000 pounds, man. Heavy as shit. Just looking down at the ground, got my headlight on. That's all I can see is just what's in front of me. So it's just like one step after another, one step after another. And a couple seconds go by. I probably get about 50 feet up the hill. And Andrew comes running up again. He's like, yo, man, the volunteer says I can just do a penalty loop without a bucket. I go, you mean the only penalty is just a loop around the course that you're supposed to carry the bucket around? And the volunteer said that you didn't have to carry a bucket, and here I am carrying a fucking bucket? Like, what's up with that? I go, that's bullshit, man. Go get a fucking bucket. He's like, I'm not going to be able to complete it. And if I don't have a headlamp, like, I'm screwed. And so I got pissed. I was like, all right. And so in the heat of the moment, I go, okay, if you're going to be following me, then we're going to trade off. When I got to set this bucket down, I'm going to give it to you so you can carry it, and we'll just trade off back and forth. He's like, okay, I'm down with that. They're pretty strict on that stuff though. So like, if anybody sees us, I don't know if they'll like, say anything or disqualify us. And in that moment, I had a deep thought, and the one word that just popped up in my mind was integrity. Integrity. What do you do in this situation? As much as I wanted to make him share the load with me, he was talking, he was saying something, and I just said, fuck it. I got the bucket. I'm going to carry the bucket. There's no switching. And kind of going back and forth and getting a little bit angry with it. I'm still trudging up the hill at the same time. I kind of worked myself up, and I had to set the bucket down. So I set the bucket down, and I'm just counting in my head, like 1, 2, like taking these deep breaths and just thinking like, this could be it, right? Like, I might not finish. And the big thing that I thought about in that moment was the belt buckle that I was looking to earn out of this race. This belt buckle is for my daughter, my 4th daughter. So I've done 3 ultras prior to this point. This was the 4th one. And so I wasn't coming home empty-handed. So I remember throwing that bucket back up on my shoulders, getting up to the top of that hill. As soon as we cut over and we were coming down, it was kind of easy after that. But I remember once setting that bucket down, it was fucking go time. And so we're going through trees, we're going over logs, couple of easy obstacles here. We got that vertical cargo again. We get to what was 31, inverted wall, easy stuff. I remember getting out to this point, and there was like a little service road right. No, it was right at the end here. It was right before we got to the sandbags, in fact. So right at this Atlas carry, I remember there was a service road, and there was a 4-wheeler that pulled up, and a volunteer yelled out. He's like, you got 30 minutes. If you don't have a headlamp, you're over here. You're done. Your race is done if you don't have a headlamp. And at that point, Andrew was like, dude, I'll see you later, man. I was like, we're out of here. Because going through these trees, like, he was kind of falling behind a little bit. So I was stopping and kind of shining a light for him. And part of me was like, man, if this motherfucker slows me down and I don't pass because of that, all this work, oh man, that was tough. But I was like, I got you, brother. Like, let's go, let's go, let's go. And that's when we kind of split, though, because he basically got pulled off the course because he didn't have a headlamp. And so I remember getting to the sandbags. At this point, my watch was dead. And I just remember, hearing, hey, you got 30 minutes left. I had no idea. And I say it was right there. It was actually back here. I want to say it was like around the inverted wall area is where they kind of pulled people off the course. So, but getting to the sandbags, I'm just like, all right, here's the test, man. I get that sandbag up on my shoulder, and I start going up the hill. And I remember just, oh man, such a rush. It's like, you got to get to these points. You have to earn the right to be in these positions. And thinking about everything that led up to all the challenges, all the tests, all the thoughts, all the doubts that I had on whether or not I was going to finish this race, it like came down to that. It couldn't have been anything better. It's nighttime, the sun's down. I got to see the moon rise. And I'll tell you, coming on this backside of this course, finishing things up, I remember seeing the moon like I've never seen the moon before. The moon was orange. When the sun went down, it was like a pink sky, something I've never seen it that beautiful before, right? So I got to experience an amazing sunrise, you know, going up the death march, being able to look back at the sunrise. I got to experience the sunset and then the moon rising. It was just like God put me in this position. God is good. God is good. And he has various ways of testing us and putting us in these positions. And so here I was with this sandbag carry. And I just said to myself, ain't no way I'm setting this thing down. There's no way I'm coming home empty-handed. I remember this was probably the hardest part of the race, just this uphill section here. However far that was, I want to say they were about 500-meter loops around there. And so making it up to the top, I remember going across, and I remember how difficult the downhill was. And so I was worried about that. I was like, okay, I got these nasty little trenches I got to get through. But what was really cool at this point, when you're coming across and you're coming down the downhill, I remember seeing the finish line and seeing the fire jump. I mean, the sun's down, you can see the fire going. It was home stretch point at that point. So I remember getting back to the sandbag carry, dropping that sandbag off, and somebody saying, hey, it's 8:45. And knowing that I only had, you know, a couple of obstacles, I was like, we fucking did it, right? So we sprint through, we hit the multi-rig, which is just a rig with a bunch of rings on it. They actually had an easier version of it this year. So it's just rings, a bar, more rings to the end. So hitting that and then finishing up with the A-frame climb. So climbing up and over the A-frame and then jumping over that fire was just an amazing feeling. Like very accomplished feeling, knowing that there were just multiple points in that race where the doubt was real. The doubt was real, but once I finished that thing, it was very fulfilled, very fulfilled. So a great experience overall, kind of reminiscing on that. So if you're thinking about doing one, do one. Start with a super, do the beast. I saw people, you know, the beast course, this particular course in Vermont, is the course to do at some point if you want a real challenge. Even the beast course was a test, because obviously I had to run that on the second time around. But man, what a test. What a test of just physical, mental, spiritual grit and resilience. And so happy that I did it, and happy to have shared the experience with you. So hopefully you get some insight out of this. What I can say is, if I was to do things all over again in prep for this race, what I did were a lot of runs with a weighted vest on, just to get that stress on my legs. Didn't have any hills to really climb that were similar to the climbs that I faced here. But I'd recommend a lot more just hiking, general hiking, hill work, slow grinding hill work would be good with like a weighted vest. Even a ruck would be a good preparation for this type of course. But good times, very accomplished. Until the next one, if there is a next one. Thanks for tuning in.